What we have here is the Wemo Wi-Fi switch made by Belkin. It's a wirelessly controlled switch. You control it over Wi-Fi using an app on your mobile device, such as Android or iOS, for example. It's one of Belkin's suite of Wemo products, which would include items such as this electrical switch here, which switches a plug on or off. It also has light switches, sensors, actual light such as strings of LEDs and light bulbs, and also third-party products such as coffee makers and crock pots and slow cookers and the like. This would sort of be classified as Internet of Things, and that is where you add network connectivity to devices that wouldn't normally have network connectivity to allow them to be controlled remotely over a network, or to allow them to control other devices remotely, or just to send information back and forth, such as sensor data or readings or whatever. It's very much a consumer product in the consumer sphere, so to speak. Yeah, so let's set this up and show you how it works. Now, the first thing you need to do to set it up is go around the back of it, look at the label and take a note of its SSID, which in this case is Wemo Switch 905. Every switch has a sort of unique SSID, so you can identify it on your network. The next thing you do is just plug it in and wait for the Wi-Fi light to start flashing. At this point, I'm actually going to jump over to a screen grab of the setup process on my Android phone. So here it comes. The first thing you need to do is to connect to the Wi-Fi network created by the Wi-Fi switch, which in this case will be Wemo Switch 905. Its connection isn't very strong, so it might take your device a few minutes for it to pick up on it. As you can see here, it's taken a couple of scans to find it. And there we go. So now we connect to it. Simple as that. Once you're connected, you then go and open the Wemo application on your phone. And it'll now try and connect to the Wemo switch. I will say this much about the Wemo app. It is a bit weird at times. The first thing you do is you put in a name. As I'm just going to call it Wemo Switch 1. It says device icon, and if you tap on that, it goes, we're sorry, we don't have custom icons at the moment, so why do they give you that option? It doesn't make any sense. So it doesn't seem like the hardest thing to implement, but again, that's one of the little weird things I'll be mentioning about this app. So now we're going in to set it up. Attempt to connect to the switch, and please wait. And it takes about 30 seconds or thereabouts to make the connection. Okay, we've just come back after about a minute. Again, one of the other weird things about this app is once you've set it up, it should then, once you set the switch up, it should then cause your switch to connect to your own Wi-Fi network. Sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. What should happen is your switch should be connected to your own Wi-Fi network, and this app should then instruct your phone to connect to your home network. It doesn't really do that. Well, it does do it after several attempts. So I'm going to jump over this. And now we're trying to connect again. It's disconnected my phone from the Wemo switch network, and it's now trying to connect back to my normal Wi-Fi network, but for some reason it goes through 3G first. To be honest with you, it's something it should be a bit more clear about telling you that it's going to do. And it's these little sort of weird and idiosyncrasies that cause me concerns with Wemo. It's like it's the sort of thing that, no, if you're technically minded, you understand it, you kind of go, oh, it's having a bit of a hiccup. For someone who's not really familiar with this kind of stuff, they'll be looking at that going, what's going on? They'll be tempted to take it back to the shop. And there we go. Now, remote access enabled. I don't remember enabling this, so it's probably just a courtesy to let me know. You have the option to switch remote access on or off. So there we go. We're set up. Now, you notice there's a camera there called 47. I'll do a review on that later. That's the Wemo Belkin Netcam HD. It's a network camera, which I'm not very happy with, but I'll do a review and explain all. So we're just going to go into the sort of rules for setting it up here. In terms of like using time or time switch it on and off kind of things. So you can choose to switch it on. You can go in, pardon me, burping away. Switch on when, choose the days just by tapping. A lot of the interface elements are a bit odd. For example, this looks like you should be able to just swipe it like any other Android interface element, but you can't. You have to tap the up and down arrows to move through it, which is just, It's one of those little weird things you kind of wonder why they did it that way. So there is an option set. I'll put in the name of the rule. Morning caffeine. Yes. This is for switching on the coffee maker first thing in the morning because I don't function without caffeine. The little tick you see to the right of Wemo Switch 1, again, another one of those weird interface elements. You touch where the tick is to switch the tick off, but then you touch on the text to switch it on again. So it's, again, it's one of these things that strange. You kind of have to wonder why they did it that way. So now we're going into away mode. Away mode is pretty much the same as times mode, which is slightly different rules. But I'm doing this here just to give you an idea of what it looks like. As you can see, I'm tapping away there to switch it off, but then to switch it back on, I have to tap back in the texted area. See, I'm struggling there to turn it back on, and I had to go over to the left to turn it on. It's very strange. So there you go. Oh yeah, auto off is a feature that if you switch it on, it switches off after a certain length of time. So you might maybe have a night light in the kid's bedroom and you wanted to switch off after 10, 15 minutes, whatever. And if you switch it on, it'll automatically switch off after a while. Again, you have to choose your device. So if you've got multiple switches, you'd have to choose which one you want from the top of the list. And that's how you disable a rule. Here we are in the settings page. Most of it is fairly straightforward. You can connect with if this then that, and you'd use a pin to link your device with an if this then that account. I'm going to skip over that and cover that later. Yeah, if you want to add in more Wemo devices, you do it here. Which I don't have any on the network, so it's going to give me not going to find any. It also comes up with this message about disabling scanning. That's where your phone scans constantly for new networks, and the Wemo app doesn't like you doing that. I'm assuming is once you're connected to a device's Wi-Fi network, there's a chance that you jump back onto your own more stronger home network if you had scanning set up. You can also put in your home city, but I'm not going to do that. No privacy and all that. The Remember Wi-Fi settings option is there so that when you add new devices, you can automatically have your Wi-Fi network injected into them without having to type in the details again. So there we are, back at the start. And now we're set up. And I'm going to plug in a light to the socket, the Wemo switch, to show you how it works. As we go into the application, tap the button, switch it on. Yay, instant disco party. And if we tap it again, oh, disco party's over. Anyway, so that's basically how it works. Quite simple, really. And if you're outside the house, it'll work as well. So really, the application is quite simple. And if all you want is to switch an appliance on remotely, yeah, there's one button that turns it on and off. Simple as that. Now I'm going to move on and talk a bit about connecting it to external systems such as if this then that, and talk a bit about the API or the non-existence of the API for this switch. IfThisThenThat.com is a service that lets you define recipes in the format of if this thing happens, then go and do that thing. Anyway, to set it up, you generate in your app, you generate a PIN number, which you then put into if this then that, and I'm assuming that you've already got your if this then that account attached to Twitter, because I'm going to use Twitter for the demo here. So anyway, we're going to do a quick search for what existing Wemo recipes are in there, and there's quite a few. There's well over 300, but I'm actually going to create my own recipe just to show you what it's like and how easy it is. So here you go. Click on the recipe. Create recipe, click on create recipe, and then first of all choose this. Now as you can see, there's a lot of stuff to choose from here. Email, RSS feeds, even triggers from appliances, you name it, it's all there. All the popular services are in there. And if we go down to the bottom, you'll even see that those green icons there are various Wemo devices, so they can act as a trigger as well. I'm going to use Twitter, and there it is. So I click on Twitter icon, and that takes me down to choose the trigger. So you got various choices, such as if someone mentions you on Twitter using your @ account name, that triggers someone. So if you're a bit vain and you love being mentioned on social media, you could attach it to a siren or a light or something to let you know when someone has mentioned you. I'm actually going to keep it simple and just say when I tweet from the Roberts Shed Twitter account. You have the choice of choosing plain old new posting or retweets or mentions. I was going to go for plain new tweet, and that is I'm going to trigger the switch. Scroll on down to the Wemo Switch. There is it. There it is. And again, a couple of more options. Switch it on, switch it off, toggle it, or switch it on and off, which is what I'm choosing. So that switches it on for about a second. Choose the switch I'm using. If you'd other Wemo devices, they would appear there. Click on create and then create the recipe just to confirm. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is go over to my Twitter account for Robert Shed. Which is criminally underutilized. And I'm going to just send out a test tweet. So say Wemo test. And tweet. Now, here's the problem. It can take anything from a minute to 10 minutes for the trigger to take effect. I'm assuming that's because that's how long, no, it takes that long for the message to get through the various APIs. I've developed with Twitter APIs in the past, and basically how much you're willing to pay dictates how quick the service will be. So I'm assuming with if this and that, they're not probably going for the premium service. They're probably going for the service that gets their requests put on the back of the queue. Who knows? But anyway, what I'm going to do now is jump and tell you how long it takes for the light to be triggered. And 3 minutes and 9 seconds after sending the tweet, this happens. Yay! Another instant disco. So yeah, so roughly 3 minutes is how long it took. That's not bad. No, it's you're battling against all the traffic going across the internet, and like if you just want to control stuff remotely, grand. I wouldn't do anything time sensitive based off that. So there you go. That's how if this then that integrates nicely with the Wemo Switch ecosystem. So now I'm going to move on to the API and how that works. Belkin does produce an API for their Wemo system, but it's for Android and iOS only. They don't provide any systems for PCs, such as under Java or C# or any other number of languages that you would run on an actual computer, which is a bit of a pity, really. I know they're focused on mobile, but it would be nice if you could control all this from a computer. People in the past have tried to develop a .NET API using C# and a bit of mixed success. It used to work on, there was one published, and I'll put a link in the description, by a guy who actually worked for Microsoft, and it worked in Windows 7, but then suddenly stopped working even though the code didn't change. And digging around the forums, I've sort of found out that basically Belkin's implementation of universal plug and play, which is a way for various devices to communicate across a network and announce their presence, isn't strictly by the book. Specifically, it jumps ports when it's when it's being discovered, and it's one of those things is that it's annoying, but you can get around it. But it's messy. I'm sure Belkin's own applications and SDK for their mobile devices understands this and can work with it. Whether this is an accident by Belkin or if it's deliberate, I don't know. But all I know is that yes, it's the previous the Windows 7 implementation of Universal Plug and Play accepted this issue. Previous and newer versions don't, and I suspect that's because Windows 8 and above their Universal Plug and Play libraries are adopting a much more strict interpretation of the Universal Plug and Play standard. So that but if Belkin was running its own software, it'd probably have its own implementation and understand all this. I did come up with a slight workaround to control this from my computer, and I wrote a little application. The application was written in C#. Instead of using Universal Plug and Play to discover the device, it actually goes out onto the network and searches for devices that return a setup XML file. Which is what Universal Plug and Play is all about. There is actually a Linux web server running on the actual switch itself, and that returns files describing what it is and how it works. So my application goes out and searches the network for those. I'm not going to release the code because it's absolutely messy and horrible, and it's just really not good quality code. But as you can see, it does work. I have got the ability to switch the devices on and off across the network. Here we go. On and off. And from that, you could just use the back-end code to do more stuff. So if you wanted to sort of run some sort of fancy display, you could using this code and these switches. Now, what's the good and the bad and the ugly about this? Well, one of the biggest problems I have with this is its size. It's huge. If you look at, look at it plugged into this 2-socket adapter. It's so big. You could use that as a weapon to bludgeon someone to death with. And if I try and plug anything in alongside it, for example, this HTC charger, which is the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen, but it's quite small. They've designed it to be compact. But if you actually try and plug it in beside the Belkin switch, you can't switch it in. Plug it in. It just doesn't go in. Now, if you actually plug it into a standard BS1363 socket, it isn't as bad. You can still plug in something beside it, but then you can't actually get access to the switch on the socket. Well, you can, but it's a bit of you have to squeeze your fingers in there. So I'm kind of wondering why they made it so big. They could have, I'm sure they had to cram the electronics in there, but could they have made it taller or longer or thinner? It just seems weird why they would make it so big, but it is well made. That's one thing going for it. One other issue I have with the Wemo Switch, and it's a bit of a curious one, there's no form of security on it at all. There's no passwords or authentication, usernames, tokens, you name it. So basically it means once you've it set up on your network, anyone who connects to your network and has the Wemo app on their phone will be able to control your switch. They'll see it and have full control. And I'll give you an example here. It's on the network now, and I'm going to use a phone which has never connected to any Wemo switches in the past. The Wemo app's on it, but I've never used it to connect to any switches. But it logs in and it finds a switch, and if I plug in and show you, I can switch it on and off. I have full control of any switches in the house. And the same goes for any other Wemo appliances. The video camera is a bit more secure, but yeah, generally any Wemo devices on your network are accessible to anyone who has the Wemo app. And the biggest concern there is if you've got remote access enabled, once you get access to the Wemo appliances on the network, you can take the permissions to switch those on and off or control them with you when you leave that network. So let's say you have a visitor comes around and they go, what's your Wi-Fi password? You give it to them, they're on the network, they install Wemo, they connect to all your Wemo appliances, they go home, they're off your Wi-Fi network, but they're sort of tapping all your switches on and off and driving you nuts. Which is a bit curious why there isn't some sort of more secure way of handling this. I just find that very, very strange. Now, I don't know how people could use this to do real bad. They could use it to annoy you and drive you up a wall, but in terms of actual committing crimes, I'm not sure. But I'm sure there's someone somewhere would figure it out. More of a concern would be actually low-level software vulnerabilities in the switch, and there have been some. If you look at some of the big technical news sites such as The Register and Ars Technica, they have discussed in the past that Wemo switches and Wemo devices have had basically bugs in their software that let someone get into your network, although they are releasing firmware that fixes that, so that's good. They are keeping on top of it. But like I say, there is no authentication, and I'm surprised. Really, Belkin should have some form of authentication. And if you do put this on your network and you're worried about people taking control, then maybe your router has a guest option, and that creates a secondary wireless network that bypasses all your local devices and gives people a connection direct to the internet. So that's one way of getting around that. So yeah, in summary, it's a decent device. If you want something simple to control, and you want to be able to set up time options and the like to switch it on and off, it'll do that. And it doesn't matter if your phone's switched off, all those settings are actually stored in the switch itself. So if that's what you want, great. If you want something that you can control over the internet using if this and that, also great option. It works, does what you want. Bit slow, but then I'd say that's pretty much the same for all services that operate in a similar manner. But yeah, my biggest concern is the security of it. And the size. I think Belkin have kind of dropped the ball on that. So, like I say, for something that cost €30 in a sale before Christmas, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. So hope you enjoyed my review. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments, and hope to see you again soon. Cheers and bye-bye.